B'siyata d'shmaya, we're going to learn sukkah Daf Nun Beis. We're going to start 7 lines from the bottom of Nun Aleph Omid Beis. Says the Gemara, B'moitze Yom Tov Chulei. The Gemara takes us back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah at the bottom of Daf Nun Aleph Omid Aleph told us that Motze Yom Tov Rishon, on the night after the first day of Sukkot Shel Chag, Yordu le'ezes Noshim, the Kohanim and Nevi'im went down from the Ezes Yisrael to the Ezes Noshim, u'masaknim sham tikun godil, and they would fix something that had tremendous benefit. And the Mishnah didn't tell us what it was. Asks the Gemara, my tikun godil, what was this great benefit? What did they change? What did they do that was such a great benefit? Omer Belaza, ka'isa sheshoninu, is reminding us of what we've learned elsewhere. Chalaka hoisa b'rishayna, at the beginning by the Beis Hamikdash Harishon, the first Beis Hamikdash, then the Ezras Noshim, the walls of the Ezras Noshim, it was just straight and smooth. There were no balconies protruding from it. V'kifua, and at some point they surrounded it because it was terois with a balcony. V'hiskinu, and they instituted sheyu noshim yoshveis l'maylo v'anoshim l'mata. They said that for tznius reasons, for modesty reasons, the women would be sitting up on a balcony, looking down at what was going on in the Ezras Noshim, the whole Simchas Beis HaSheva, v'anoshim milamata, and the men were down on the ground of the Simcha of the Ezras Noshim for the Simchas Beis HaSheva. Tanu Rabbanon, we learned in a Brayso in a Tosefta, Barishoino, at first, Hoyu Noshim mibifnim, the women were in the Ezras Noshim, v'anoshim mibachutz, and the men were outside in the Chel, the area just adjacent to the Beis Hamikdash on the outside, and the Harabayis. V'hoyu boim lidei kalis roish, and the very fact that the men were outside, the women were inside, it led to very frivolous and light-headed behavior. So they decided to change it. So the women should be on the outside, and the men should be on the inside. And still, they were too close. They were too close to each other. They were going through each other. They still had contact with each other, and it brought on some frivolous and light-headed behavior. And then they instated that the women should be up on the balcony, the men at the bottom, and then everything was okay. And that was indeed a tikkun gadol. The Gemara now asks, how could they possibly add balconies to the walls of the Ezras Noshim? Does it not say in the pasuk in Divrei Yomim, Hakoil bichtav, the whole plan of the Beis Hamikdash was written miyad Hashem, from the hand of Hashem. Olai hiskil, it was given to me. Koil malachis hatavnis. The whole structure of the Beis Hamikdash, to the finest detail, was given b'nevuah to David HaMelech, and David HaMelech gave it to Shlomo HaMelech. You couldn't just change things. Omar Rav said no. Kro ashkechu. They actually found a pasuk that the pasuk tells us that it's appropriate that the men and women should not be together in order that it shouldn't bring to undesired behavior. V'dorosh, and they expounded on the following pasuk. The pasuk says in Zechariah, V'softa ha'oretz, and this is actually talking about Milchemes Gog u'Magog, what's going to be in Yirtzeh Hashem B'Kariv, that Rashi here brings, it's going to be, soon the Gemara is going to discuss it, but Rashi brings that at some point during the war of Gog u'Magog, Mashiach ben Yosef, there's two Mashiachs, there's Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef is going to be killed, and there's going to be a hesped, a eulogy. V'softa ha'oretz, and the land will eulogize. Mishpochis, families on their own. They wouldn't be all mixed together by the hesped. Mishpochis levad. Mishpachas beis David levad. The family of David would be on his own. Unashem levad, and the women would be on their own. Mishpachas beis Nasan levad. Unashem levad. That's what it says in the pasuk. So Omru, they said, let's make a kal v'chomer. Umal le'asid lavoi. If the end of time, when there's going to be the Milchemes Gog u'Magog, she'oiskim behesped. Number one, they're going to be busy they're going to be engaged in eulogizing, which is tsar, and a person doesn't get so lightheaded when he's in a situation of pain and mourning. And also, at that point in time, Hashem is going to remove the Yetzer Hara from our hearts, and we're going to learn more about this later in the Gemara. So the Yetzer Hara doesn't have that much control over them, and nonetheless, Omra Torah, the pasuk says in Zechariah, Anoshim levad v'noshim levad, men should be on their own and women on their own. Achshav, now during the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, Sha'asukim b'Simcha, number one, they are engaged in joyous behavior, and Simcha brings to a certain lightheadedness. And also the Yetzer Hara sheilit behem. The Yetzer Hara has power over people. His time is not yet up. Alachas kama v'kama, even more so, we can assume that pasuk in Zechariah is teaching us that at every opportunity, make sure that men and women don't mingle together. Based on this pasuk, the Chachamim understood that in the Beis Hamikdash, they could make these balconies to separate the women from the men, that the women should be on the balconies at the top and the men underneath. Says the Gemara, Ho Hespeda, this eulogy, that there were this hesped that's mentioned in the pasuk in Zechariah, Maya Vidite, who were they giving a hesped on? Pligi bar of Doisav Rabbanon. It's actually Machloikas. Chad Omar al Mashiach ben Yosef shenerag, as we saw before. One of them says that Mashiach ben Yosef is going to be killed in the war, and that is what the hesped is going to be on. The Chad Omar, the other opinion holds, Al Yetzer Hara shenerag. It's actually none other than the Yetzer Hara is going to be killed, and they're going to eulogize. There's going to be some form of hesped, of mourning. According to the opinion who says that they were going to have hespedim and mourn over the death of Mashiach ben Yosef, we understand that it says in the pasuk, a couple of psukim earlier in Zechariah, it says in the pasuk, V'hibitu elai eis asher dokru. That means they will look, they will gaze at me, the one that they have stabbed and killed, v'sof to Olav, k'mispeid al yochid, and they will eulogize and mourn over him like somebody who mourns over the loss of an only child. So we can understand that that's what that is what the mourning is. If Mashiach ben Yosef got killed, El Olamanda Omar. Al Yetzer Hara shenerag, according to the opinion that it was the Yetzer Hara that got killed. Highest Beida boy lemevad. Are they going to mourn and eulogize him? Simcha boy lemevad. On the contrary, they should be very happy that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, has finally been put to an end. Amai bochu. Why would they be crying? Because the psukim say there that there was a hesped, and there was mourning and eulogizing and crying. What were they crying about? Says the Gemara, Kedorash Rabbi Yehuda. La'osid Lovay, Rabbi Yehuda said that La'osid Lovay, in time to come, Meiviyah HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yetzer Hara. Hashem is going to bring the Yetzer Hara. V'sheichato is going to slaughter it. B'fnei HaTzadikim or B'fnei HaRashoim, before the Tzadikim and before the Rashoim. Tzadikim nidme lohem kahar gavoya. The Yetzer Hara will appear to the Tzadikim like a very big mountain, something impossible to overcome. Rashoim, and to the Rashoim, nidme lohem kachut asayra. The Yetzer Hara will appear to them like a strand of hair. Halalu boichin v'halalu boichin, and they'll both be crying. Tzadikim boichin. Why will the tzadikim be crying? Va'imrim, they'll say, Heich yecholnu lichboish har gavoya hazeh. They're going to remember all those pain and all the challenges and everything they had to go through to overcome this Yetzer Hara. It's going to make them cry just remembering what they had to go through. Rashoim boichim, and the Rashoim are going to cry. Va'imrim, Heich lo yecholnu lichboish eskut hasayra hazeh. They're going to say, how could we not overcome this Yetzer Hara? He's all of the size of a strand of hair. Hashem is going to actually be in wonderment with them, with the tzaddikim. That's how Rashi in Zechariah explains it. He's going to be wondering with the tzaddikim, how indeed was it possible to overcome such a big Yetzer Hara, like a tall mountain. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk in Zechariah, Koyomar Hashem tzvokis, ki yipolei be'einai, it will be wondrous in my eyes, she'eris ha'omazeh, the remnants of this nation, bayomim ahem, gam be'einai yipolei nom Hashem tzvokis, also in my eyes, I will be wondering how indeed they could overcome the Yetzer Hara. Continues the Gemara, Omer Avasi, Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara b'tchila, at first, when a person first has his challenge with the Yetzer Hara, it's compared just to a spider, a thread of a spider. But at the end, it's like the ropes of a wagon, of an agola. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk. Pasuk in Yeshaya says, Hoi wo moishchei ha'ovoin, those who draw their averas, bechavlei hashav, with ropes of nothingness. V'cha avois ha'agola chato, and like ropes of the wagon, of an agola, chato, they sin. So you see here that the Pasuk first refers to the averas as shav, as nothingness, and afterwards it's like thick ropes. As Ravasi said, that at the first it's a chut shel buchya, it's just like a spider's web, which is no substance to it whatsoever. But if you actually go after the avera and you give it substance, then it becomes stronger and bigger and thicker, and the Yetzer Hara is much bigger. Continues the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanon, Mashiach ben David, she'osid lehigolois b'mehira b'yomeinu. Mashiach ben David, that Emir Hashem in the future, very soon, is going to be revealed. Hashem is going to say to Mashiach ben David, Sha'al mimeni davar, you can ask for me anything, ve'eten nachon, I'll give it to you. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk, Asapra el choik, Hashem omar elai, that Hashem said, Asapra el choik, that I'm going to make it known today that Aniya, B'ni Ato, you're my son, Aniya yom liditicha, and I created you, I formed you today, and we have a relationship of father and son. And then the pasuk says, the next pasuk, Sha'al mimeni, ask of me, ve'etno goyim nachlosecha, and I will give the nations to you as an inheritance. V'achuzoscha af se'oretz. Kivan sharo Mashiach ben Yosef shenerag, when Mashiach ben David became aware and saw that Mashiach ben Yosef was going to die, Omar lefonov, then Mashiach ben David answered to Hashem, when Hashem said, you can ask me whatever you want, he said, Rabbeinu Shalom, Eini mevakesh mimcha Elochaim. All I'm asking you is to survive, to live. Omar lo, Hashem said to Mashiach ben David, Chaim, regarding survival and life, Ad shelo yomaruto, even before you asked it, Kvar isnabe alecha David avicha, that your father David HaMelech, he was already prophesied about the guarantee of your survival. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk in Tehillim, Chaim shoal mimcha, that for life he asked of you, Nosatoloi oirech yomim oilam voed, and you gave him, the Nevuah says that your request has been granted, and your son Mashiach ben David is going to be granted life. Continues the Gemara. Dora asher ba'avira v'itemi Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. One of them expounded as follows: Shiva shemois yesh le'Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara has 7 names, 7 formations, 7 ways of being revealed, the 7 aspects and faces of the Yetzer Hara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu korohi ra. Hashem simply called it bad, ra. Shenemer, as we see in the Pasuk in Parshas Bereishis, Vayorach Hashem es reach hanichoyach, Vayomer Hashem el liboy, lo oisif, is actually in Parshas Noach, lo oisif lekalil oides ha'adomo bavura odom. I'm not going to curse the land anymore because of consequent to man's deeds. Ki yetzer leiv ha'odom, because the inclinations of the heart of a person, ra, are bad, min ura, from his youth, v'lo oisif oid lahakei eskol chai kashe osisi. After the flood, after the Mabel, Hashem said, I'm not going to do that again. Hashem said, Ki yetzer leiv ha'odom ra min urav. So you see the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, is called ra, bad. Moshe korei oral. Moshe Rabbeinu called the Yetzer Hara as uncircumcised, as if somebody hadn't done milah. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk, Umaltem, you should circumcise as orlas levavchem, the orla of your hearts. So you see that the Yetzer Hara is called orla. David korei tomi. David called the Yetzer Hara as impure. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk says in Tehillim that David HaMelech said, Leiv tohir baroli elikim, a pure heart create for me, Hashem. And Michlal de'ikatome, from the fact that he was asking for a pure heart, it seemed that his Yetzer Hara is referred to as impure. Shlomo HaMelech koroi soine. Shlomo saw the Yetzer Hara as an enemy. Shenemer, as it says in the Pasuk, in Mishli, Imra'ov soin acha, if your enemy is hungry, ha'achileu lechem, if the Yetzer Hara, who is your soine, who's your enemy, is hungry, ha'achileu lechem, feed him with Torah, take him bother him with the toiling of Torah, and as it says in another pasuk, L'chu lachmu b'lachmi, and give him with Torah, and with Torah you'll overcome him. V'im tzomen, if he's thirsty, hashkeu mayim, then give him water to drink, again alluding to Torah. Ki gecholim atachoysa al roishay, because that way you are heaping coals on his head. V'Hashem, and the pasuk continues, V'Hashem yeshalim loch, and the literal translation of that is that Hashem will reward you. But the Gemara says, Al tikri yeshalim loch, it doesn't only mean the way it's read, that Hashem will reward you, rather, Elo yashli menu loch, he will pacify him. That means that if you learn Torah, then ultimately Hashem will make that the Yetzer Hara will become your friend, and he's going to stop bothering you and stop hurting you. Yeshayahu koroi michshel. Yeshayahu called the Yetzer Hara by the name of a stumbling block. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk in Yeshaya, va'omar soilu, pave, panu derech, clear the path. Harimu michshel, remove the stumbling block, miderech ami, from the path of my nation. And the stumbling block is referring to the Yetzer Hara. Yecheskel kori even. Yecheskel referred to the Yetzer Hara as a stone. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk in Yecheskel, v'nosati lochem leiv chodosh, I will give you a new heart, v'ruach chadosha, a new spirit, v'etin bekirbechem, and I will put it inside you, v'asiroisi es leiv v'even, I will remove the heart of stone mibsarchem from your flesh, v'nosati lochem leiv basar, and I will replace it with a heart of flesh. So you see here that the Yetzer Hara in the heart is considered a stone. Yoel koroi tzfoini, Yoel called the Yetzer Hara tzfoini, meaning the hidden one. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk in Yoel, ve'es hatzfoini archik me'aleichem, the tzfoini, the hidden one, the Yetzer Hara, I will distance from you. Says the Gemara, based or continuing with this pasuk we just mentioned in Yoel, Tonu Rabbanon, ve'es hatzfoini archik me'aleichem, I will distance from you the tzfoini, the Yetzer Hara. Ze Yetzer Hara shetzofun va'omed b'liboy shel adam. This is the Yetzer Hara that is hidden and standing, that's lurking in the hearts of man. V'hidachtiv, and I will banish it, el eretz tzia or shmama, to a desolate place, lemokim she'ein b'nei adam mitzuyim leizgaris behem, a place where no man will be found to incite. And that's what it says in the pasuk. It's words in the pasuk. And then the pasuk continues. Esponov, his face, el hayom hakadmoini, v'soifoi el hayom ha'achroin, va'olov va'oshoy v'tal tzachanosoy ki higdilasois. This is all referring to the Yetzer Hara, whose face was to the Yam hakadmoini, which is the first sea. What's this alluding to? Shenosan Einov b'migdosh risha in vechriva. He set his eyes on the first Beis Hamikdash and destroyed it. And the Beis Hamikdash is called a sea because just in the same way as all rivers lead to the sea, so too all the people would come and collect, or would be found in the Beis Hamikdash. So the first Beis Hamikdash is called the Yam HaKadmoini. And he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, v'harag Talmidei Chachamim sheboy, and killed the Talmidei Chachamim in it. The pasuk continues, v'soifoi el hayom ha'achroin, and afterwards the end was to the second sea. What is that? Shenosan einov b'migdash sheni, he set eyes afterwards on the second Beis Hamikdash, v'chriva, and destroyed it, v'harag Talmidei Chachamim sheboy, and killed the Talmidei Chachamim in it. Continues the pasuk, v'olo v'oshoy v'tal tzachanosoi, then his foul odor of the Yetzer Hara will arise, v'tal tzachanosoi, and his stench will rise up, and kihig dilasoi, so something particular bad that he was doing, shemaniach umoisa oilom umizgara b'seneim shel Yisrael, because he doesn't bother the goyim, he just comes and incites the seneim shel Yisrael. The literal translation is the enemies of Klal Yisrael, but it's just a nice way of saying that he's not inciting the nations, he's only inciting Klal Yisrael. Kihig dilasois. And when it says here that Kihig dilasois, the last words in this pasuk, Omar Abaya ubetalmidei chachomim yoisa mikulam, that he incites more than anyone else, he incites the Talmidei Chachomim, and that means the greater people. Where do we know this from? Kihada Abaya, an incident with Abaya. The Shomei Lau Gavra, he heard this man, the Ka'omalu Itza, that he Itza, who's said to this woman, Naktim, let's rise up early, V'nezel Baruch, and go on the journey together. Omar Abaya said, Ezel, I better go. I assume that since they're going to be in a secluded area and they're going to do an Aveira there, I better follow them and make sure they don't do any serious Aveiras. Ozal Basrayu, he followed them, Tlosa Parasi, a very long distance of 3 parasa, Ba'agmo in a meadow, there's nobody around. And at some point, Ki have a Poroshim Adodi, when they came to a crossroads and it was time for them to take leave because he lived in one place and she lived in the place in the opposite direction, Sham'inu de Ka'omri, he heard they were saying, Oirchin Rachika, our paths are distant from each other. I have to go one way, you have to go the other way. V'tzavosin Basima, however, the company was very pleasant. We enjoyed each other's company, which means that they had some type of relationship. The company was pleasant. It wasn't like two estranged people. And even though they were felt pleasant in each other's company, and they spent such a long time in a secluded area, nonetheless, they didn't do any Aveira. Omar Abaya said to himself, if Manda Sonili, the one who I hate, and he was referring to himself, if it would have been me in that man's position, I would not have been able to restrain myself. And he felt, how can it be that this person who had such strength to not do the Aveira? Ozal and Sabaya went, Tolo Nafshei, he was leaning, Beibura Dadasha, on the bolt of the door. He was leaning there with Mitztair, and he was very despondent. How can it be that I, Abaya, know that I wouldn't have been able to withstand such a challenge, and this person could? Osawu Saba, this elder came to him, and very often Awu Saba is actually referring to Eliyahu Hanavi. It's discussed in Tosfos and Chulin Davov. Tonale, and told him, remember, Kol HaGodel Mechaveroi Yitzrei Godli Menu. The greater you are, the greater the Yetzer Hara is going to fight you. And therefore, Abaya, you can relax. The reason that you wouldn't have been able to have the strength that he did is because your challenge is so much higher and larger than his challenge, because you're a Talmud Chacham. You're Godel Mechaveroi, you're greater than him. Continues the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Yitzchok, Yitzrei Shel Adam, the inclination of a person, Mizgaber, strengthens Olav B'chol Yoim, every day and all day. The Yetzer Hara just keeps strengthening itself and putting us to the test. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Vayar Hashem ki rabba ro'as ha'odom ba'oretz v'chol yitzamach shu es liboy rak ra kol hayom. So from the rak ra kol hayom, you see that all day long the evil of the Yetzer Hara is just strengthening and is becoming more and more. Omer Shimon ben Lakish, Yitzrei shel Adam Mizgaber Elav b'chol yom. Every day the Yetzer Hara strengthens itself and tries to fight with a person, u'mavakish la'misoi, and attempts to kill the person. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Tzoyfe Rosha Latzadik, this Rosha, this wicked Yetzer Hara, is constantly watching the Tzadik, u'mavakish la'misoi, and wants to kill him. It's in the Pasuk in Tehillim. If Hashem wouldn't give this person siyata d'shmaya to overcome the Yetzer Hara, obviously a person has to do his, but at the end of the day he also needs siyata d'shmaya. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, the next Pasuk, Hashem lo yazvenu b'yadoi, Hashem will not forsake him into the hands of the Yetzer Hara, lo yarshi'enu b'hishaftoi, and will not condemn him in his judgment. Continues the Gemara, Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, it was said in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, Impoga b'cha menuvel zeh. If this revolting Yetzer Hara engages you, moshcheu lebeis hamedrash, pull him to the beis hamedrash, sit and learn Torah. Im evenhu, if this Yetzer Hara is stone-like, nimoyach, he'll dissolve in the shul, in the beis hamedrash. Im barzelhu, and if he is very iron-like, mispoitzeitz, then he will shatter with the Torah. Im evenhu nimuach, if the Yetzer Hara is stone-like, he will dissolve the chsiv, as it says in the Pasuk, hoi kol tzomei, anyone who's thirsty, l'chul hamayim, go and drink water, referring to Torah. Uchsiv, and it says in another Pasuk, that's a Pasuk in Yeshaya, in Iyov it says, avonim, that stones, shochaku mayim, water can wear them down. So if water can dissolve and wear down stone, and this person who is thirsty, meaning the Yetzer Hara is trying to overcome him, is going to the water, is going to Torah. So what Torah is going to do to the Yetzer Hara is what water does to the stone, is going to dissolve it. And if the Yetzer Hara is iron-like, then he will shatter. It says in the Pasuk, Haloi koi devorai, is it not my words of Torah ka'esh, Dvori, Ka'esh, is it not like fire? Nu'um Hashem, says Hashem. Ukapatish yifoitzeitz, Selah, and like a hammer shatters a rock. So you see clearly that Torah, that is the fire, the words of Hashem, which is fire, has the capabilities of shattering a rock, like shattering iron, like a hammer shatters a rock. Continues the Gemara, Amr B'Shmuel Bar Nachmeni Amr B'Yechanan. Yetzer Hara masisoi la'odam ba'olam hazeh. The Yetzer Hara incites a person to do an aveira in this world. Umeid alav la'olam haba, and then in olam haba he testifies against him. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, mefanek minoyar avdoi, that somebody who pampers this servant, referring to the Yetzer Hara from his youth, va'achrisoi yeh monoin, then the end, what will be is that this Yetzer Hara will be a ruler over him. Because at first, the Yetzer Hara is supposed to be a slave to a person, that a person is supposed to have control over it, as it says in the Pasuk, Va'atotim shel boy, you'll overcome the Yetzer Hara. But if you pamper the Yetzer Hara and you give in to him when you're young, then what's going to happen is the Yetzer Hara will be a ruler over you. What makes the word menoin mean a ruler? Monoin, it's a pasuk in Mishli, it's a word in Mishli. But how does monoin mean a ruler? Shekain, because Reb Chia had a way of arranging all the aleph base in an order called Atbach. In a moment we'll discuss that. And if we're using the order of the alphabet called Atbach, Kairin Lesada, then a witness, which is called Sahada, is the same letters as monoin. And what this means is that the Reb Chia arranged the aleph base in a way that the units, tens and hundreds, every pair would make up 10. So in the units it's 1 and 9, 2 and 8, 3 and 7, 4 and 6. And the 5 is standalone. And then in the tens you've got the same. You've got the Yud and the Tzadik, the Chof and the Pei, the Lamed and the Ayin, the Mem and the Samach. And then you have the Nun in the middle. And then with the hundreds also, we know that there's Kuf, Reish, Shin, Tov is 100, 200, 300, 400, but the final letters are also in hundreds. That means the Chof Sofi, the final Chof, is 500, the Mem Sofi is 600, the Nun Sofi is 700, the Pei Sofi is 800, and the Tzadik Sofi is 900. And there again, the Kuf goes with the final Tzadik, etc. And the letters of the fives, that means the 5, the 50, the Nun, and the 500 being the Chof Sofi, they don't have a pair, and they interchange with each other. So if you take the letters of the word Sahada, then the Samach goes together with the Mem. The Hey, which is 5, is with the Nun, because it's with the 50. The Daled is with the Vav. And then again, the Hey and the Nun. So Sahada and Monoin are the same letters. Continues the Gemara. Rav Huna asked an apparent contradiction. Ksiv in one pasuk it says, Ki ruach zenunim hit'o, vayiznu mitachas Elohem. There was the spirit of the Znunim, some ruach Znunim that misled them. So you see that it's something external, something outside of them, which influenced them and made them do an aveira. Uchsiv, but in another pasuk it says in Hosea, Lo yitnu ma'al alehem lo shuv el Elohem, ki ruach znunim bekirbom ve'es Hashem lo yodo. It says that this spirit didn't just mislead them from outside, it was bekirbom, it was inside their hearts. Well, make up your mind. Is this Ruach Znunim just something outside of them misleading them, or is it part of who they are inside them? Answers the Gemara, B'tchila Hatim. At first, it's just an external misleading. But afterwards, if you listen to the Yetzer Hara, then at some point it will be inside the heart. Continues the Gemara, Omar Rava. B'tchila koroi heilech. At first, the Yetzer Hara is just called like a heilech, a wayfarer. Ulebasoif, and later, koroi oireach. It's called a guest. It's a little bit more connection than just a wayfarer. Ulebasoif koroi ish, and after a while, he's called an ish, which means a balabais. He becomes the owner and the boss. Shenemar, where do we see this? These are psukim in Shmuel. The pasuk says, "Vayovoi heilech leish he'oshir," that a wayfarer came to a rich man. Vayachmoil lakachas mitzoinoi umibekori, and this rich man was reluctant to take from his own sheep and cattle, lasois lo'ireach, to make a meal for the oireach. You'll notice that it started by saying a wayfarer came to the rich man, and the rich man didn't want to make a meal from his own sheep for the guest. So already the wayfarer is now referred to as a guest. So what did this rich person do? He took a sheep from the poor man, and he prepared it lo'ish, for the man haboilov that had come to visit him. So within one pasuk, the heilech became the oireach, and the oireach became the ish. And that is what Rava had said. Continues the Gemara. Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Eiver cotton yeshle le'adam, there's a small organ every person has, mar ivoi soiva, if one starves it, and that means one doesn't give it more than one is supposed to, then soiva, it will be satisfied. Masbioi, but if you're constantly trying to satisfy it, rav, it will always be hungry. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, kamar isam, in as much as you afflict it, v'yizbo, that's as much as it's going to be satisfied. Sov'u vayoram libam alkein shecheichuni. A pasuk in Hosea. Continues the Gemara. Omer of Chano bar Acha. Omer beirav. They said in the Beis HaMedrash, Arba mischaret aleim HaKadosh Baruch Hu shebaram. So to speak, and we can't understand this in a literal sense, but so to speak, there are 4 things that Hashem sort of regretted having created, and like took responsibility for the negative that came from them, as if I created it and this is the mess that we're in. And obviously, so to speak, Hashem doesn't regret anything. Hashem always sees everything in advance, but there's just a concept, and we're just reading the Gemara at face value. Ve'elehein, and they are, number 1, Golus, the exile of Klal Yisrael. Kazdim, they were the people that destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. They were the Kazdim. Ve'yishmaelim, and the Yishmaelim, v'Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Hara. Golus. Where do we see that the Golus, that Hashem exiled Klal Yisrael, that so to speak he regretted it? Tichsiv, it says in the pasuk, va'ato, and now, the pasuk in Yeshaya, mali poi, what do I have here? This is a term used in regret. No'um Hashem, says Hashem, ki lukach ami chinom, because my nation was taken for nothing, etc. Moishlov yehelilu, it's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Kazdim, where do we see that Hashem, so to speak, regretted the having created the Kazdim? It says in the pasuk, also in Yeshaya, Hein eretz Kazdim zeh ha'om loy haya. This land, the land of the Kazdim, loy haya. I wish it wouldn't have been created. I wish it wouldn't have been. Yishmaelim. Where do we see regarding the Yishmaelim that Hashem, so to speak, regretted it? It says in a pasuk in Eov, Yishloyu oyholim l'shoidudim, the tents of the robbers prosper, ubetuchois lemargizei el, and those that provoke Hashem are very secure. La'asher hevi eloya beyodoi. This is referring to the Yishmaelim that typically just live in tents in the deserts, and then it says the end of the pasuk, "Lashehevi Eloya biyodoi," is like Hashem is saying that it was me, Hashem, I created them. I brought them as if I'm taking responsibility for it, as if I regret. I wish it wouldn't have been necessary. It wouldn't have been done. Yetzer Hara. Tichsiv va'asher hari. Oh, you see, the pasuk says in Micha regarding the Yetzer Hara that va'asher hari. Oh, you see, that so to speak, Hashem is saying that I caused Klal Yisrael to be evil because I created them with the Yetzer Hara. So there again, it's Hashem saying that He's taking responsibility and so to speak regretting the situation. Continues the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Yochanan ilmoli shalish mikrois halalu, if not for the following 3 psukim, nismoitetu ragleim shel soneim shel Yisrael, then the feet of the soneim shel Yisrael, which is just an elegant way of referring to Klal Yisrael, they would crumble. Chad, one pasuk d'chsev that we just mentioned, V'asher Hari Oisi, that Hashem said that I was the one that caused Klal Yisrael to be evil. I created the Yetzer Hara, and I caused all this. And this pasuk is giving us some way of getting past when we fall. We're not allowed to fall. This is not an excuse. But when Chas v'Shalom, Klal Yisrael fall, we can say, Hashem, at the end of the day, you had part in this, and it somehow helps us in the judgment. V'chad, another pasuk, the Chsiv, it says in the pasuk, Hakayotzer hazeh lo yuchal lasis lechem beis Yisrael num Hashem hinei kachomer biyad hayotzer, as clay in the hands of the potter, Kain atem biyodi beis Yisrael, so too you Klal Yisrael are in my hands, which means that our destiny and our challenges and everything we go through is in Hashem's hands. So that somehow that's also an opening for our judgment to say that Hashem, it's true we shouldn't have fallen, but we are in your hands. Ve'idach, another pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'nosati lochem leiv chodosh v'ruach chadosh etin bekir bechem v'asiroisi es leiv ha'even mibsarchem v'nosati lochem leiv basar." Hashem says, I will remove from you the heart of stone. I will give you a heart of flesh, which means that all the challenges we have in our hearts, it's all in Hashem's hands. And on the day of judgment, after we do tshuva, we can use that as well. Continues the Gemara of Papa Oma Af Mihai Nami. Of Papa brings yet another pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ves ruchi etin bekir bechem." Hashem says that my spirit I've put inside of you. Vosisi esasha b'chukai telechu mishpotai tishmur vasisem. But again, Hashem is owning that what's inside us, which is responsible for everything that we feel and experience, is coming from Hashem. Continues the Gemara. It says in the pasuk in Zechariah, "Vayareini Hashem arba choroshim." Hashem showed me 4 craftsmen. Manninu, who, this is Zechariah speaking, which 4 craftsmen did Hashem show Zechariah? And these are the craftsmen that, so to speak, would be influential on some level with the Geula, with the redemption. Manninu arba charoshim, who are these 4 craftsmen? Omer V'chonim bar Bizna, Omer Shimon Chasida. Number 1, Mashiach ben David. He's a craftsman. He's going to be building. He's going to be building the Beis Hamikdash. Mashiach ben Yosef, also a craftsman. He's also going to be a builder. He's going to build the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'Eliyahu, we know Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come before Mashiach comes, and Eliyahu was also a builder. We know in Tanakh that Eliyahu Hanavi built the Mizbeach. V'Kohen Tzedek, and Shem, the son of Noach, is also going to be there. It was also shown, and he was also a craftsman. He helped Noach build the Teva, the Ark. Moshe Rav Sheshes has a challenge with this. If you say that when the Pasuk Zechariah base, Pasuk Gimel says that Hashem showed him the 4 craftsmen who he said was Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Eliyahu, and Kohen Tzedek. But look at the next Pasuk, in Pasuk Daled. It's a long Pasuk. We'll read the whole Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Va'omer, and I said, Mo eile boim lasos. What are they coming to do? Va'omer, Leimor, Eile Akronis, these are the horns, Ashazeru es Yehuda, that are going to disperse Yehuda, Klal Yisrael, Kafi Ish, Leinoso, Roishai, Vayavoyu Eile, and these will come, Lahachrid Oisam, in order to terrify them, Leyadois, in order to cast down as Karnis Hagoyim, the horns of the Goyim, Anoisim Keren el Eretz Yehuda Lezaroisa, who are carrying a horn to the land of Yehuda Lezaroisa to disperse them. So the Pasuk speaks about Eile, speaks about them, but the Pasuk speaks about twice them. First it speaks about Eile, is the Eile Akronos, are the horns, Asher Zeiru es Yehuda, that dispersed Klal Yisrael. And then the Pasuk says, Vayavoyu Eile, and these will come, Lahachridoisam, to terrify them, Leyadis is Karnas Hagoyim, in order to cast down those horns. So at the first, the Gemara, Rav Sheshes understood that the 4 Charoshim, these 4 craftsmen, is referring to the first Eile in the Pasuk, which are those that dispersed Klal Yisrael. And he's going to ask a question, I don't understand. The four you mentioned, the four that Reb Shimon Chasidah mentioned, are not dispersing Klal Yisrael, they're gathering Klal Yisrael. The Gemara is going to answer that it's actually the second half of the Pasuk, which is the four Charoshim. They are the ones who are going to terrify the nations and bring Klal Yisrael back. Let's see this inside. Mosiv Reb Sheshes, Yehochi Hainu Dechsiv. What are you doing with the Pasuk that says, Vayomer Elai? It doesn't actually say those pasuk, those words, but it says Eile Akronos Ashazeru, that they are the horns that dispersed as Yehuda. They dispersed Klal Yisrael. Hani, but these, asks of Sheshes, Leshuva Asu. These Mashiach and Yehonovi Kohen Tzedek, they are going to bring Klal Yisrael back to restore them to their place. Omar Leis, he answered him, Shvila Sefer Dekro. You have to continue reading the pasuk. You'll see another group of people mentioned there, and they are the craftsmen that we described who they are. What does it say towards the end of the pasuk? Vayavoyu Eile, they will come. This is the four craftsmen that we mentioned. Lahachrid Oisam, to terrify them. Liyadois Es Karnis Hagoyim, to cast down the horns of the Goyim. Hanoisim Keren El Eretz Yehuda, those that lifted and carried a horn against Yehuda, Lo Zoroisa. Omar Le. So he said, Rav Sheshes answered back and says, Behadi Chano, because who was he talking to? It was Rav Chano Bar Bizna that said in the name of Rav Shimon Chasidah. And Rav Sheshes asked Rav Chana that from the pasuk it seems not like you said. And Rav Chana answered him. So Rav Sheshes says, Behadi Chano ba'agadat lomoli. He's far superior than me in explaining the agadis of Chazal, and I can't challenge him and I can't argue with him. Continues the Gemara. The pasuk says in Micha, V'hoya zeh shalom. This will be peace. Ashur ki yavoi ba'artzeinu, when Ashur go through our land, v'chiyidreich ba'armeneseinu, and when he will tread through our palaces, ve'ikamnu olav, and we set up against him, shiva roim, 7 shepherds, u'shmoino nesiche adam, and 8 princes. Man ninu shiva roim, who are these 7 shepherds? Says the Gemara, David be'emtza, David HaMelech in the center, Adam, Sheis Umusushelach Miyaminai on the right, Avram, Yaakov, and Moshe Bismoile on the left. And where was Yitzchok? Yitzchok is going to be going to pull people and save people away from Gehenna. Says Rashi, Uman Ninu Shmoino Nesiche Adam. Who are these 8 princes? Says the Gemara, Yishai, David HaMelech's father, V'Shaul HaMelech, V'Shmuel, Omus, Utzfanya, Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, Umashiach, V'Eliyahu HaNovi. Continues the Gemara. Arba Sulomo Yisachulu. We saw in the Mishnah that in the Ezras Noshim there were 4 Sulomois, 4 ladders going up to each of these menorahs, that each of these menorahs had 4 bowls at the top of them, each one had a ladder going up. Says the Gemara, Tana Goivo Shel Menorah Chamishim Amma. The heights of these menorahs was a tremendous 50 amas, very, very high. Continues the Gemara of Arba Yelodim Shel Pirchei Kuno B'Yodem Kadei Shemen Shel Meo V'Esrim Loig. Iboyelu asks the Gemara, Meo V'Esrim Loig, the Kulhu, did each of them have 120 Loig? Oidil Melekol, Kulhu means between all of them 30 Loig each, or Oidil Melekol Chad V'Chad, each one had 120 Loig. Answers the Gemara, Toshma in the Brisa, it says, Ubiyodem, in their hands, Kadei Shemen, they had barrels or they had jugs of oil, Shel Shloishim Loig, each one just had 30 Loig. Sheim Kulam, and between all 4 of them, Meo V'Esrim Loig was 120 Loig. Tana, the Brisa says, V'hein Meshubochin, these youngsters, Kohanim, that were going up these ladders, holding jugs of 30 Loig of oil, are praiseworthy more Hayu Yosem Ibnoshel Marto Bas Baisus. A Kohen, but the son of the daughter of Baisus, they are even more praiseworthy than this person. Omru al Benoshel Marto Bas Baisus, it was said about the son of the daughter of Baisus, Shahayonoitel Shtei Reichis. He was so strong he could take 2 thighs, Shel Shoyer of an ox, hagodol, a big ox, shelakuach be'elev zuz, that was bought for 1,000 zuz. Or mahalech, and he could slowly, normally when somebody's carrying something heavy, he's rushing to put the thing down as quickly as he can. He was carrying 2 thighs of an ox, of a big ox, and he was going slowly, eikev b'tzad goydel, heel to toe, and as if it was just no great feat. And that's how he was able to go up the ramp of the Mizbeach that way. However, his brethren, the Kohanim, didn't allow him to do that, because it's more of a hodor, it's more of a splendor for the king if more people are serving him, not just a single person is doing it all. And elsewhere we learn in Yuma we learned exactly how many people, we needed the 24 people, how many people it was that would take all the parts of the korban, of the animal, and how it was split up, and therefore they didn't let him take more than just one piece, which would be allotted to him. The question is, these people, these kids that were taking up these jugs of oil up these ladders, why were they even more praiseworthy? Is it because of the weight of these jugs? The 2 thighs of this ox were much heavier. So why were you giving more credit, so to speak, or more praise to these Kohanim? Elahosam kevesh, over there it was a ramp, umaruba, and it wasn't so steep. It was the ratio of the height versus the length was 1 to 4. It was 9 amos high and 32 amos long, the ramp. And now a ratio of 9 to 32 is a ratio of 1 to 3.6, which the Gemara calls maruba, which is a ratio of 1 to 4. V'lo zokuf, it's not steep. And therefore it's true that the 2 thighs were very heavy, but to go up a ramp and it wasn't so steep, that's not such a big deal relative to Hacha. But going up these ladders, Sulomis is ladders, V'zokif Tuva. It was very, very steep ladders, and even though it was less weight, but to be able to go up 50 amos a ladder holding a jug of 30 loig, that's an even greater feat than holding 2 thighs of an ox and going up the ramp. Continues the Gemara of Lohoya Chotzer b'Yushalayim. The Mishnah said there wasn't a single courtyard in Yerushalayim that couldn't benefit from the light of these menorahs. Tana, we learned in a Braisa, Isha Hoisa Boireres Chitim. There was so much light that a woman potentially could sort out the grains, the wheat grains, Lo'or Shel Beis HaShe'eva, from the light of the Beis HaShe'eva. Whether it was actually permitted to do that or not is a discussion. In Tosfos here, whether one was allowed to have benefit from this oil, but there definitely was enough light that the women could have sorted out the grains with this light. And in Mirz Hashem, in the next shiur, we're going to continue from here.